Welcome back, Impact Heroes. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Change social impact hero, and she is an interesting and accomplished one. Our guest today wants to shake things up, make waves if she has to, and better our community. She's a true change agent that's committed to improving the social services industry by proving that making a profit in a traditionally nonprofit space is the path to great social work. Something I agree with completely, by the way. She's doing everything she can to eliminate institutional care settings for good and is not afraid to make a difference. She's honest, driven, passionate, and a champion of women in business, an active blogger on issues from motherhood to leadership to high-risk housing, and a fierce advocate for the underserved. She's a resourceful visionary who knows how to spread positive change and does so every day. Please welcome the authentic, driven, empowering, and amazing founder and CEO of Sample Supports, Carmen Sample. Welcome to the iSpark Change podcast,
Thank
Carmen.
you. That was so nice.
Oh, well, it is your story, so but you are welcome. Yes, I always enjoy doing the intros because I want to honor and credit my guests in the best way possible and share how wonderful you are with our audience just right from the top. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have you on the show, Carmen, because we see you as someone that is making a difference in the lives of others, someone who is positively impacting humanity, and someone by our definition that is a social impact hero. So that's an acronym that we may get to or may not throughout the conversation. But the question I have for you that we ask all our guests to start out the show is, we see you as a hero. Do you see yourself as a hero?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I kind of have to answer that like humbly, right? I'm just like, no, I don't.
However
No.
you want.
So no, I don't truly, but it's a sweet question. So here's the thing. I think that, I've devoted a lot of my life and especially my adult life to speaking for people that don't have a voice. Right. And so I guess in that way, I do think that there's a hero aspect of being a social worker. And I'm constantly with my employees, I'm constantly reminding them that they're heroes, whereas I feel like at this point I just work in a lot of spreadsheets and do a lot of, policies and whatnot. But the people that are spending every single day working with people that are challenging, that have a lot of life issues that they're helping them work through, is that is a challenging job that not everybody can do and that not everybody wants to do. So I always remind them that they're the heroes. We call them our rock stars, where it's the people that actually spend the time and effort to dive deep into someone's life, knowing it's going to be hard, and knowing that the path is going to be challenging, but they do it anyway. That to me that's the hero piece.
Gotcha. So there's your humble answer that you said. Yeah. And, I've in the 170 or some odd episodes, there's always unique answers to that question. And some people feel as you do, that they don't want to necessarily take the credit. And the thing that I had to figure out, and part of why I created iSpark Change and the podcast and everything, is that I believe that we all have the capability to do heroic work on a daily basis, just by impacting one person. Just if we positively impact the lives, the life of one individual any random day, then that in itself is doing heroic work. And so that's the definition that I use. And the acronym that we have is that a hero honors their purpose, that they engage their audience in their mission, that they ripple their message to others to spread positive change, and that they open their heart to the world. And so that's the loose criteria that we use for hero. And, the at the foundation of that is that we all have the capability to be a hero on a daily basis. So I'm sure you check those boxes every day, whether you want to admit it or not.
I think the heroic aspect, I guess, if I look at it at all, is putting yourself out there. I think that's anybody can start a business, right? But not everybody can make that business successful. So that's a different skill set altogether. But even of people who have made their businesses successful, I'm always surprised by how few people put their neck out there a little bit farther. How few people start a podcast or start a blog or do whatever they need to do to kind of be hey, I've earned, a lot of this kind of power and privilege in my life in a lot of ways. It's so now how am I going to use that moving forward? So I feel that's the piece where I'm willing to kind of put my neck on the line a little bit, and I'm willing to kind of step over the edge to say I have this success, right? And I have this privilege in my life. And like, I feel like I should use that to good for the good of others. Like, I think it's kind of wild that there's so many of us walking around that have that capability or have the resources and then do nothing, you know? And so I think that
Hmm.
that's maybe heroic. And I wish more people did it more.
Yeah, and that's part of, I agree completely. And that's part of our goal with iSpark Change is to help,
Yeah.
you know, spread awareness for of individuals like yourself and the work that you're doing and how it's positively impacting others, and really amplify that voice to so more people hear it, so more people are aware, so more people are inspired and motivated to do something themselves.
Mhm.
Getting back to what I said, that we all have the capability to do that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that origin story, if you will, of how you got on this path of doing the work that you're doing, and
Mhm.
what was it that really triggered you to do the heroic work that you're doing?
Hmm. So it's funny you use the word hero because I grew up in an alcoholic family. My mother was a pretty severe alcoholic. And I don't know if you're familiar with like family systems theory, but they always talk about how like there's like the dysfunctional part of that, and then there's the child who becomes the family hero. Have you ever heard of this before? And like yeah.
Hmm. I
And I was
have.
definitely
I
that
grew up in
kid.
an alcoholic home as well, so.
Yes. So you understand how that works. And so the catch 22, right, of being the family hero is like you're the kid who like creates the esteem for your family, right? You're kind of constantly seeking these gold stars. It's almost like a way to be like, look over here, you know, like look what this
Mhm.
great thing is doing while you have this kind of dysfunction happening in your house. So I grew up with kind of like a double-edged sword in that way. But I also my mother was really involved with AA. And so we had constant people that were living with us throughout my childhood. Like kind of like a revolving door. It was almost like we were like our own kind of halfway house for all these people from AA. And so I got
Mhm.
really used to having people kind of in my home and helping other people and seeing people kind of like in the worst spot of their lives. And
Yeah.
I always looked forward to the new people coming in. And so I kind of embraced that whole idea. And as I became older, I was just kind of really drawn to like working with people when they were in challenging spots. So I started working in foster care group homes, and I started working with people with disabilities, and I was doing all of that while I was going to school. And then I kind of fell into a job where I was working more directly with people with adults with disabilities. And I met my husband through that job, who was a host home provider. And so he took care of a person with disabilities in his home. When we got together, we then did the same thing. And so by kind of working in sort of like the day to day, 24/7 hour care that a lot of people can't handle. It's funny. I tell my friends about this and they're like, I could never have someone in my home. I'm like, really? Like, to me, it was like
Yeah.
totally normal and totally natural. But as we did that, we saw different issues. And so we saw like a kind of this lapse of mental health care for people with disabilities, like a lack of, trauma support, and all these things that were happening in kind of this like under section of society that no one even knew about. And so we dove into that. I decided to start my own company to kind of promote the piece of like, can we address not only serious behaviors of the people that we're working with, but also like their full quality of life. Like, can we address their mental health? Can we address the trauma that they experience? All those pieces. And so that's how it started. And I started it thinking like, oh, like I'll just do this a little bit on the side while I build other things. But it became kind of our number one business here. And over time, we then created other businesses too. So I now Sample Supports is a huge company. Or at least huge to us. We have several hundred employees, several hundred people that we serve. We have offices across the Front Range in Colorado. But then over time, we were kind of like, okay, well now we see all these different needs. So like it was like the whole company evolved from like addressing this need, and then all of a sudden you see this need, so you're addressing this need. And one of the needs that came up was employment. And so we're like, okay, nobody would employ our people, so then we started thinking of like business ideas, like what if we come up with some other businesses where we could have several businesses, but they're also employing people with disabilities. So then over time we started developing those. We developed event centers, we developed food trucks, we had two restaurants at one point. We have all these different kind of things, and we have jewelry stores. And so we started kind of doing this to address a need. But then over time, what was great was that it developed this like wonderful quality of life for people. So now people that come into our services, they kind of experience that wraparound support of like they can come in for residential services, and they can also have employment and day program and behavior. And so we can kind of do all the things and make sure that we're really addressing that individual from like a holistic perspective, which at the time wasn't really being done very well. But it's been 15 years now, which is kind of wild. So I started it when I was pretty young. And now we're 15 years into it. And now Sample Supports is one of several businesses we own. but it's still kind of like my heart business. It's the one that was like my fifth child. I have four other kids. So-
And it's fantastic, that what you've been able to grow over the past 15 years.
yeah.
And, obviously you've impacted, you know, thousands of lives, hundreds of lives. I mean,
Mhm.
many, many lives along the way, which, is a tribute to the work that you're doing. What was really that? And I don't think I missed it, but what was really like that big motivation, like that single, if there was like, was there
Mhm.
a single point for you, Carmen, where you're like, this is how this is how I can use my
My
background,
skills.
my
Yeah.
experience, my life.
I think it was also from just like all the history and all the childhood experiences I had, honestly, too, where it's like even working with people with addiction, it was like it's never just one thing, right? It's like there's multiple facets to everybody. And
Mhm.
and for someone to get to a place where they need help, whether it's chosen or not, it's like there's a lot of things to address.
Yeah, and it makes sense because you were the most equipped to begin what you started, right? To begin sample supports and then everything that else that
Yeah.
spun off of it. It, what's interesting is that, and what's fantastic about what you've created is that you had a lot of tools in your tool
Hmm.
belt that most people do not have, right? Whether it be
Hmm.
your training or your upbringing or your life's
Yeah.
experiences,
Not
right?
very. Yeah,
And
exactly.
not super, not an effective business strategy, right? If you were doing that in business. So,
Yep.
the fact that you were able to apply all those things, I mean, that's a testament to everything that you've created and to all the needs that you're serving and that
Yeah.
you're fulfilling. So
Well, I mean, it also went on to kind of this piece of there was the mental health needs were so underserved that a lot of people that really should have been living like in their own apartments or that were really high functioning were kind of housed in these like inappropriate settings, right? So like we had people that are totally capable of having jobs and having relationships and living this like full kind of quality of life, and but they weren't allowed to live in an apartment because they had all this mental health stuff that they were dealing with. And so we sort of stepped on the stage and said, well, like, well, what if we try to put them in housing, right? Like, what if we try to have them have their own apartments? And like, what kind of supports would we need to do to make that happen? So it was like really like an intentional thing for us to be like, how do we lead with like what we want to see, you know what I mean? And then how do we kind of backfill all the supports? Because I think it's a question where I think if people are kind of like scared to go into something, and they're scared of something bad happening, or they're scared of the risk of it, then they'll never try it at all. And so for us, we're like, let's
mhm.
give people a chance. And now we have many, many people that are living in apartment settings that we, of course, handle all the mental health stuff kind of on the side and work with them through that. But we're first focusing on like what skills do they have and like how can we capitalize on those skills and help them be independent with what they have, and then we'll build the rest as we go. Because it's one of those things where it's like if you wait for someone to be fully independent, you know what I mean? Or if you wait for somebody to be fully ready to live on their own, like even our,
Good luck.
18-year-old kids without disabilities are not ready to live on their own, right? So at some point you kind of have to like do the push and you
Yeah.
have to be like, yes, like let's just try it and let's see what happens. And even though it's scary, like we'll figure it out along the way. And now there's a lot more people doing it, right? A lot of our competitors are doing it too, which is great. And so like for us, it was like kind of like a start to be like,
Yeah.
it can be done, let's just try it. Let's see what happens. And now it's a thing that a lot of us are doing, which is great.
Yeah. And one thing that I caught in what you're saying is you looked at it from through a fresh set of eyes or a different perspective, right? That almost like first
Mhm.
principles perspective. Okay, how do we break this down? The way that, like Elon Musk and SpaceX or in Tesla, how do we break it down to the what's at
Mhm.
the core? And then now let's work from there, as opposed
Right.
to all these impasses. Oh, there's mental health issues. Oh, that, the job,
Right.
the living situation, whatever it is. And that got you obviously to create something fantastic. So one thing that I know in just the work that I do in my understanding of people is that
Mhm.
you're a figure it out kind of person.
Mhm.
So you're
Mhm.
okay, you could put me in a situation, but I'm going to be able to figure it out, which is what
Right.
you just shared with regards to how you started making things work. Hey, we'll figure it out along the way, right?
Right. Just
Okay.
start it and you'll build
So
it. Yeah.
that's not everybody. That's
Right.
not everybody. Okay. That's, only a subset of the population. So what were some of the challenges in that hey, we can figure it out, it's okay, we're gonna make it work? What are some of the challenges that you faced with others that are like, oh no, you can't do that, no, that's not how we've ever done that? And
Mhm.
what were some of those challenges like?
Mhm. Well, it's kind of two parallel challenges. Like one, I was building a business, and I did not have a business degree. I was a social worker, so like I had my own set of like scaling a business and going from like 5 employees to 50 employees to 200 employees, and I mean on all those kind of pieces along the way. I was doing that at the same time as building the programs, and so there was like kind of two separate pieces. With the individuals that were living in the housing, like what was interesting about that was I think that there was a lot of pushback from the community and just kind of also from like the inner circles that we kind of work in, where it was like, but they make bad choices, right? Where it's like, well, that person, let's call him Johnny, right? It's like, well, Johnny makes bad choices and they get into bad relationships, or they do this bad thing, or whatever. And it's kind of like we had to kind of step back and be like, yeah, but like, don't we all? You know what I mean? Like, don't we all make
Mhm.
bad choices sometimes? And like, are we still allowed to like live independently? Like, is that is that a unique concept to all of us, really? Like, no, it's not. And there's all these kind of like systems that we were working in that were like almost like built to like be oppressive, like not intentionally. It's just the way rules and regulations develop, right? It's like they're developed for safety, and then all of a sudden they become like a prison. And so like we had to really like look at like what we were working within, because we're a highly regulated company. We're Medicaid funded, right? And so we had to work within our regulations to be like, but how do we like figure out how to do this in a way that like still meets rules and regs, but is also like person centered, where if we're working with somebody and they really want to live independently and they're showing 90% of the skills to get there, or even 70% of the skills to get there, again, it's like no different than one of our kids who were like leaving the nest with like 70% of the skills to live independently. And so I think
Yeah.
that was kind of, it was kind of like leading with strength versus leading with like safety in mind. And that's a hard concept, because in our field especially, it's like everyone needs to be
Mhm.
safe and we want to make sure everyone's safe. And it's like,
Yeah.
yes, and right. But if you lead with safety, you have like lukewarm ideas and you have like lukewarm programs, and you have, it's kind of like that idea of like you have to have some risk involved to be like, we're going to support you and we're just going to see how it goes. And so the whole piece of like building the plane is, we were flying it, like that was a real thing. It's like every day there was something new, and every day we probably built 400 policies and procedures, those first like 3 months. But we
Yeah.
also were like really directive with our team as well, where it's like our job here is not to be like willy-nilly. Like, we're not going to come in here and do crazy things, but we're also going to give this person a chance, and we're going to see how we can build stuff around them. And now, our high risk housing program is kind of what we refer to it as internally. Is it like everybody is high risk, right? Like all of us are kind of high risk. And so that the question is like, what does this person do that we can kind of help them with? And then at some point it's like, people are allowed to make bad decisions, whether they have autism or not. It's like, that's their life choice, and if they want to, if if they want to go and smoke cigarettes, it's like, I wouldn't choose that, but that doesn't mean they can't live independently, right? So it's kind of that
Yeah.
piece of like honoring adults for being who they are. And it's like, people can make their choices, and we are just there to support them in making better ones if we can. But ultimately it's like our job is to support them being as independent as possible, and like that's the goal. The goal is independence. It's not to like place our judgment on everybody else.
With I Spark Change, we've been building for the past 4.5 years in terms of our community, and
Mhm.
we're just started working on the beta version of the world's first social impact driven social media platform,
Cool.
and what that's going to look like and how that's going to connect and empower and support, individuals like yourself and, organizations like yours, to connect with others and help drive change and help, make a difference and make stuff happen right quickly,
Mhm,
like
mhm,
you have.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
And the biggest thing I've seen, is in kind of working in this area for the past few years, is that people like you are the outliers.
Mm,
You're not the norm. Is that, everyone else is trying to move the Titanic, and it's too slow, and
mhm,
for people like you and I that want things done yesterday,
mhm,
it
mhm.
it can be
Yep.
challenging. And so, you're a great model for others, is I guess is what I'm saying, Carmen.
Mm,
You're a great model for others, that you know you can make a difference and do it
mhm,
quickly. You can,
mhm.
and have an impact quickly. You
Mhm.
can have a for-profit business and still create
Yeah,
impact.
that's
You
right.
can have services and programs and operations that support the people that you are serving, right? That to
Yeah.
support and serve and employ the people that you are serving,
Right.
of all of the above. And that's like, because what I look at is I'm always looking for what are the things that can be a win, 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 like a win
Yeah.
in all
Right.
areas, right? And
Right.
it
Right.
sounds like that's what you've created in many ways.
Right. Right. It's also like, why do people have to suffer? You know what I mean? In kind of social work. And I think that was, that was also, if there was anything that was disruptive about it, I think the for-profit piece really was a piece of that. I went to grad school. I went to a great school, but I remember throughout grad school, it was constantly this message of like, we're all choosing to help people, and like as a result, we're all going to live in poverty and we're all going to make $20,000 a year. And there was like this constant message. And I remember I was like, I'm paying like $100,000 for this graduate degree. Like, I'm definitely not going to make it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to go and do something successful here. And so it was funny that like, I didn't think it would be as successful as it is. Like, that was a surprise to me, but I kind of, it was annoying to me that like they set up all these people for just kind of like, oh, like when we help others, like we have to just be victims too. And it's like, well, no, we don't, you know what I mean? And we can do this in a way that actually makes everyone happy. But it's funny from like a social worker standpoint, because my entire team is social workers. Most of my team is women, it's kind of the demographic of who chooses this field. But as a result, it's like I've had to train the social workers to become business people. Like I have bonus structures in place for sales. I do things that like a typical business would do. Whereas again, like nonprofits are like, what do you mean you pay people bonuses? Like, is that unethical? And it's like, well, what do you mean? You know what I mean? It's like if we maintain people and we do good customer service, like there's a bonus there. And so it's like that idea where, to me, like I think everyone should be competing. Like I think it's actually like a disservice to people in the nonprofit industry when there's not competition, because like competition like raises the bar, right? It raises the bar of service delivery. And so if we're all competing with each other, like we're all going to do a better job, we're going to offer more creative things, like we're going to kind of live at that level that everyone else does, right? Like Amazon competes too, like whatever business industry it is. So I think that we're doing people a disservice when we don't actually offer that sort of competitive spirit, because then it just becomes kind of like ho hum, like we'll just do the bare minimum. And I think that when we kind of came on the scene, it was definitely like, like we have to compete with them. And so, and everyone starts like aligning up, and then all of a sudden you have to do it better and better and better. I mean, we're at that right now. Like we've been in business for 15 years. And we went through COVID, which was rough. It's like 30% of your funding was lost overnight. But it's like we rebuilt it, and it's taken us 5 years to rebuild. And we've had to kind of even recently go through this kind of like a rebirth stage, right? Where it's like, ooh, all of a sudden we went from this like nimble, fun startup company to like a mature company with HR and like all these things. And so now it's like, now we're kind of like breaking it ourselves, and my team will joke that I feel that I'm a wrecking ball, because I kind of come in, I'm like, we got to break it, it's like break it and like put it back together, because it becomes boring if you're just doing the same thing. And so from a business standpoint, it's like the people we serve don't want that either, right? Like people we serve are evolving and changing, and they were 20 years old and now they're in their 40s or whatever. It's like, so how are we going to kind of fix this for everyone that we're working with? But I enjoy that process. And I think that the idea of like coming in and like breaking something and like putting it back together causes most people so much stress, where it's like you have to find the handful of people like you're talking about to kind of get them into a room. But then you also need the other people too to kind of like clean up your mess behind you, So it's like everyone has to work together to like make it happen. But I find it fun,
Yeah, and I can tell, and that comes out. That comes out in your passion for what you do and your drive to continue to, push the boundaries and do more. So, Carmen, what would you define? Obviously, you have different business units, but what would you define if you could centrally define your current purpose in what you do? What really drives you?
Oh, I think, I thought about this a lot. And my purpose does change. It's changed over time. I would say that what I felt when I was 25 and starting the businesses is different than now. I'm 42 and kind of, I have 4 kids and all the things, right? And so like I think that from my perspective, yeah, you have 5, that you said?
No, you have 5. Remember you said you have your 5.
Yeah, in my business. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Sorry,
Same was my 5th baby. My first one, actually. But I think I'm becoming more and more clear, just even as I kind of navigate motherhood, where it's like, I've always been really good at having a voice for people that don't have one. And I think that there's especially kind of in our industry with social workers, there's kind of like I don't want to say it wrong, but like sometimes there can be like a meekness where it's like let's not talk too much about all the things that are happening. It's almost like this politeness. And I think because I'm not always so polite, right? Like I'm kind of willing to be like, oh, I'm not going to say the most polite thing right now, and we're going to kind of move this through. That I've been able to be a really fierce advocate for people. And I think, especially now with like all the political stuff happening, I have a kiddo that's transgender. And so that recently has become this like thing for me where I'm like, whoa, I'm watching all these like kind of like bigger system issues happen. And I'm like, wow, like in our society, it's like people with power are really targeting people that don't have a voice, right? Like whether it's immigrants, whether it's people that are, and so to me, it's like we have like a responsibility to like stand up and like make our voice as loud as possible, because like the other side is already doing it and they do it naturally. And I'd argue that they do it better, right? Like they're good marketers, like all the things. And I think that when we are people that are like in a helping profession, it's almost like we're like scared to talk about it. And we're like scared to be too vocal because it might like, you know what I mean? Like undermine the mission or whatever. And so I've had to kind of accept that it's like, well, I just don't agree. And so like people can criticize me if they want, or, it's like we can have things written about us, but like at the end of the day, it's like what we are is social workers, and like what social workers should be do is advocating for other people. So it's like, it's not just building the programs and doing the day-to-day work. It's also like this higher level piece of like, listen, like Sally can't talk, so I'm going to go ahead and talk for her in this situation. It's like, I'm going to be her voice. And then the same thing with like this transgender, kind of issue in the air where it's just like, wow, like targeting people that are scared to speak already is like cruel, like that is some mean stuff that's happening. And so to me, it's like, well, we can either like all quietly like walk around and pretend like it's not happening, or we can just like stand up and be like, well, I actually do have a personal kind of like, thing in this fight. And so like for me, it's like my kid can't speak. I'm not going to go put my kid on, CNN, but it's like, but I'm happy to speak and say like, these are the things that actually everyone should know. So I think that that's kind of where it's coming to. Initially, I think when I started the companies, my passion was really just about, I wanted to make a difference in a way of like, I wanted to work with people that nobody else would work with. Because I saw that like, there's tons of social workers out there that will kind of do kind of like the top tier of stuff, but there was very few social workers that were like willing to like get their hands dirty and like get in there and like work with sex offenders and work with people that were like, they were kind of scary to them. Right. And so I intentionally kind of chose to work with individuals that were individuals that nobody else would work with. And I found that fun, and so not everybody finds that fun, and I get it, but like I did, and I found the psychology of that fun. And then now I just happen to have a kiddo that's transgender. So I'm kind of getting my hands dirty in it, where it's like, hey, like we can't just like sit by and like let all these people say these terrible things that aren't true. It's like at some point we have to be able to advocate for our kids and advocate for everybody that can't advocate for themselves. Yeah, I think we have responsibility, and it makes me sad that more people don't do it.
Yeah, those that don't have a voice, and there have to be individuals like yourself that do that, or else then those people remain voiceless, and so which is not a part of who we want to be as a society.
Right.
So a couple final questions that we ask all our guests here. And one is about spark moments. And spark moments are those moments in life where there's that initial spark, that initial act by yourself or someone else that has that ripple effect that goes far beyond that initial spark. And it may not be something that you even realize at the moment until, months, years, even decades later, where you're like, wow, that was completely life-changing. It could have been the example, one you already gave was the example of the fetal alcohol, syndrome lady that was living with you, where, kind of like a light bulb moment, I guess, if you will. So share a story, Carmen, of a spark moment in the time that you've been building your business that stands out, that is a positive example of that ripple effect and what happened, whether it was someone impacting you or you impacting someone else.
I mean, the luxury of having a business that's lasted as long as we have is that like I see those every day. I have individuals that I worked with when I used to work in foster care. I have kids that I placed in foster care, 20, 25 years ago or whatever, that are now in our services as adults. And I love that, because I love seeing it's like, wow, like this person was a hot mess when they were 15 years old. You know what I mean? And like now it's like they're functioning, they're in their own apartment. It's like I get texts from them all the time. It's just one of those things where it's like, it's a community being built. And I don't think I even had like the foresight when I first started the company to think of like how cool that was going to be. In my mind, I was just like trying to work specifically with like, can I help this person? Can I help this person? Now it's like, oh, wow. Like we have a whole community of people that we see every day at the coffee shop and, you know, kind of in our own little world, which is fun. And we've been able to provide this kind of exposure, especially through the other businesses that we have, right? That people are like, wow, somebody with a disability is the host at a restaurant, or they're working in the jewelry store or whatever. And so there's this visibility that everyone's been able to see, and then that causes ripples too. So then all of a sudden it was like I had other business owners, so I was part of the Chamber of Commerce, right? And they would call me and say, well, can I do this? And so I was like, yes. And all of a sudden we had like 50 other businesses in the area that were also employing our people, you know. But it was because like it just required us to kind of have like a few people that were visible before the people were like, oh, I didn't even think of that as an option. It's like, yeah, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden it kind of like explodes from there. So that's fun. And that's been like a huge joy of running the companies for 15 years. Like, you know, when you start a company, like, you know, right, you've started a few, it's like, you don't know if it's going to work out. And you kind of just like, you know, like throw your hat in the ring and you're like, well, let's try, you know, like, let's just try. Yeah. And as long as you keep trying, it's like, you usually kind of develop something great, you know, but you have to kind of make it through those roadblocks.
Yeah. And then there's, you know, thousands of little spark moments along the way that you get to, you know, visualize down the road.
Yeah,
well, thank you for sharing
but I think the key is that, like, I think for us, the spark moments weren't immediate. You know, like the spark moments were like, oh, this takes a little bit of time. Because it's almost like when you look back, like all the spark moments that we had were actually like the hardship moments. It was like, that was a really hard day. You know what I mean? You're like, whatever happened.
400 times being hit. Like, that would be tough.
Yeah.
It'd be tough, but definitely all worth it. All worth it in the end. Thank you very much for sharing that. So where can our audience learn more about all the work you're doing?
Well, my company is Sample Supports. So you can go to samplesupports.com to learn about that company. And then I have a blog that I write about various political issues and whatnot on changeitanyway.com.
Fantastic. We will make sure all those links are in the show notes so everyone can check that out. Well, one final question here, Carmen, because our goal at iSpark Change is to positively impact 1 billion people with our upcoming social media platform within 5 years of launching that, which should be later this year. Cool. Now, we know we can't do it alone. We know we need the help of impactful leaders like yourself, people that are going to, you know, make a difference, right? And kind of buck the norms. So we value your thoughts and opinions as a social impact hero. So I want you to peer into the future and tell me, what can the world become if everyone starts taking that chance that you did on and making an impact?
More creative. You know what I mean? Like more creative and more competition, which I think is good. Like we have so many people, you know, that even that work for us, like have these great ideas. And so my job as a leader is to be like, do it, like try it. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's do it together. Or I can help fund that or whatever. So I think that if everyone just took like a tiny bit of their idea and just even an hour on it, do you know what I mean? Like half those ideas would explode into something. And I think it's just that piece of like taking the first step and like doing something creative and different, even if it feels kind of crazy. So I guess I would foresee a more creative world, you know, because I believe that even like through all of our differences, like I believe that people are kind and I believe that people want to help others. And I think that at our core, like that's what we feel valued by, is like, how do we help somebody else? And if somebody has an idea to do that, it's like, just start it. And, you know, it's like, you'll figure out how to fund it later, but just start the idea and see where it goes.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah. And thank you for taking time to share your heart and wisdom with our audience today, Carmen. You came in and you over-delivered as I expected, but your desire to help others is clearly evident. You're filled with passion, determination, and you lead with a heart of service and gratitude, which tells me you're going to continue to have success in all facets of life and every business that you create. And this is only the beginning of your time as a social impact hero.
Thank you.
All right, Impact Heroes, it's our stories that connect us all, and we loved hearing Carmen's today. Carmen Sample, you're not only an inspiring and amazing human being, you truly are an iSpark Change social impact hero. We'll see you all next time.